Welcome to Next Level Play Therapy, a weekly podcast dedicated to supporting the next generation of child and adolescent therapists to provide exceptional play therapy services. We'll explore all things play therapy to elevate your work with children and adolescents using the therapeutic powers of play. I'll discuss practical tips and ideas so you can provide a transformative experience for your young clients and make a real difference in their lives. So get ready to take your play therapy skills to the next level and make a lasting impact in the lives of children, adolescents, and families. Hey there, welcome to this week's episode of Next Level Play Therapy. And today we're going to talk about progress and how to tell if there's progress. So if you're a play therapist, the likelihood you've had this happen is pretty high. So let me know in the chat if you have ever experienced this. Raise your virtual hand, so to speak. Let me know. Ever leave your playroom thinking to yourself, ugh, I don't know if this is working. I don't know if I know what I'm doing. Nothing seems to be helping. I must be doing this wrong. Like they're not making progress. You're getting phone calls in between sessions, sometimes maybe with parents who are frustrated or wanting things to go faster. And you start to second guess yourself. Is it really working? Do I know what I'm doing? Is my client making any progress? These are things that we talk about a lot in Play Therapy Academy. So I figured if we were talking about it in Play Therapy Academy, then probably others of you were experiencing this as well. So I thought this would be a great topic for today's episode, and that is how to tell if your client is making any progress. And here's the thing, like play therapy is, well, let me back that up. So the analogy that I use is for adult therapy, right? You can ask your client, you chat with them, they're giving you insights most of the time, not always though. But you can have that interaction. You can have that verbal discussion about progress and what that looks like and what's different. In play therapy, it's a little different, especially when you're working with younger kids. The younger the child, the more you're going to have to rely on looking at what's going on in the session and what are they communicating through their play. And that's a huge difference between talk therapy and play therapy. And play therapy is an expressive arts modality. So we're, we're looking at how children are communicating symbolically through their play. How are they communicating through their behavior and some other things? And so I always say when you're a play therapist, you're listening deeply to their play. In the same way, if you're an adult therapist, you're listening deeply to what your clients are saying. How are they saying it? Their body language and those kinds of things. For play therapists, we're looking at their play. What are they communicating symbolically? How are they interacting with you? What are they saying during their play? These are all things that we look for when we're looking at themes. And these are also some of the things, there's more, and we're going to talk about that today. There's more things that you can look at other than their play therapy themes. And I find this is a topic where play therapists struggle figuring out. We've all struggled with this. Like nobody is immune from struggling from this. So if you are struggling with this, know that you're not alone. And to me, this is something that we talk a lot about in Play Therapy Academy, which is my online group program. The nice thing about doing this in a community, having a community, is that you can look at, like, we'll look at video sessions and get a sense of what's going on and can see those subtle changes. We'll look at themes and we'll kind of see how they're doing and are they making progress? Is play therapy working? And those kinds of things. So to me, this is one of those things why it's helpful to have a community of support when you're struggling with the question of, is this really working? Am I making a difference? Am I helping this client? That's one way that having a community of support can be really helpful to do that. So let's talk about, how do you tell if play therapy is working? How can you tell if your sessions are even productive? So if you're watching live today, welcome. And I would love for you to join the conversation. Post in the comments where you're from, what population you're working with. Join the conversation. What are your insights? What are some things that you look for? If you're watching on the live stream replay, welcome as well. A lot of people watch the replays. So go ahead and join the conversation. Post in the comments and share your insights. What are your questions? Where are your struggles? And for those of you listening on the podcast, feel free to pop over to my Instagram and leave me a message or send me a message. Those of you watching the live stream or the replay, feel free to message me. I go live on YouTube and LinkedIn every week and Instagram. So every Wednesday at 7 a.m. Pacific time, you can join in for the live episodes, or you can feel free to watch the replay. So we have welcome Brooklyn, New York user. I work with 8 kids ages 3 to 8. Yes, and their families. So you are definitely going to have to rely pretty heavily on looking at themes and looking at their play and recognizing progress that way for sure. What modality are you using? I'm curious if you're working with children ages 3 to 8. Yeah. Anyway, awesome. Welcome. So let's go over. So today what I'm going to talk about is how to tell if play therapy is working by these 5 signs. And so I'm going to go through these kind of quickly because I try to keep this weekly episode. So I try to keep it to 30 minutes. I never make it to 30 minutes. So it's usually more like 40 minutes. So I'm going to go over these for the next 40 minutes. These really do usually require a little more in-depth, but at least this will get you started to kind of think about some things. These are things that we spend a lot of time on in Play Therapy Academy. So it does require a little more in-depth, but at the same time, I thought it would be useful to share these so that you at least get a sense and you can kind of start thinking about these things and seeing how they show up in your play therapy sessions. So Brooklyn user says, child-centered play therapy only for me. In my head, I was thinking, oh, she has to use child-centered play therapy with that age group. Yep, that's kind of my default mode is child-centered play therapy. I use, especially if I'm working with little kids, like that age range you talked about. I am strict child-centered play therapy. All righty. So what are the 5 signs to tell if play therapy is working? The first sign is looking at are they able to regulate more in their sessions? So you're looking at increased regulation in their sessions. So maybe in the beginning they weren't using a lot of words, and now maybe they are interacting with you a little bit more. Maybe now they're inviting you into the play, and you can tell they're feeling a little more comfortable. You might see that maybe where they had trouble transitioning in the session, or usually transitioning out of the session, maybe that's going a little bit smoother. Are they sustaining their play longer? These are usually things that you can tell that in the beginning that they are really starting to feel comfortable in your play therapy sessions, because we know from neuroscience that children need to feel safe in order to engage their social engagement circuits, which means they need to engage those social engagement circuits in order to engage their play circuits. So if they're engaging in play longer, if they're interacting with you a little more, they're sustaining, maybe in the beginning it was like a lot of everything and they were kind of all over the place in the playroom, but now you're seeing them sustain their play for a lot longer, and you can see that they're feeling a little more comfortable with you, then that's a good sign that play therapy is working. That they're feeling safe in the session, and that they're going to be able to use the play therapy process in order to facilitate change, because they have to feel safe in order to play, in order to access those therapeutic powers of play. Then they're going to have to access those play circuits. Here's the other thing you want to think about is your play therapy model is going to influence how you're making sense of what's going on in the sessions and if they're progressing through each stage. So, for example, child-centered play therapy it's got 4 stages, and you're going to be noticing certain things going on in each stage in order to tell if they're progressing through each stage of the play therapy process. So like in Adlerian play therapy, that's going to look a little different. In Gestalt play therapy, that's going to look a little different. So your play therapy model is definitely going to influence how are you making sense of what's going on in the sessions, and if they're making any progress. It's also going to influence how you're making sense of the themes in their play therapy sessions as well. So there's some general themes across all play therapy models, like control, nurture, aggression. Regardless of your play therapy model, these are going to be themes that you're going to be seeing, but your play therapy model is going to influence how are you making sense of what those mean, and how are you making sense of what that means in terms of where they are in the play therapy change process. Which brings me to the next number 2. How do you make sense? How do you recognize if there's any change? And that's is looking at their play themes. This one's a little harder. This one takes a little more time usually. So here, when you're looking at play themes, you are making sense of what they're communicating to you through their play, and how does that change throughout the change? How does that change over time through each stage of the play therapy process? So, for example, in the beginning, we typically see children are a little more superficial in their play, not really getting too much into the deeper levels of what's going on. Sometimes you'll have kids that'll come in and do it right away, and then you're saying this is a kid who is ready to go feels comfortable getting started, and play therapy would definitely be working, at least in the beginning, because they've gotten started and you're noticing starting to play things out through your understanding what they're communicating through their play right away. So then that would be progress, right? They're getting started, at least they're getting started right away, right? In the beginning phase. Or it might be that maybe at first, maybe the play was a little chaotic or rigid and they kind of held you at arm's length. Then that would be some progress. And now they're inviting you into the play. Or maybe if you're looking at the themes of aggression, right? Maybe in the beginning of the play, girls, I'm going to make a general statement, and it's gender based, it's general, and there's truth to it. There are differences in females and males, and there are differences typically in the way they play in the playroom. That has been my experience. And one of the things that I've noticed is aggression themes look a little different oftentimes in girls than it does in boys. Like, for example, one of the themes that you may see for aggression in girls is maybe I used to see this all the time. So in the dollhouse, there would be people and there would be arguing and conflict. Maybe something was one person in the family or friend or neighbor was doing something wrong, and the other people in the play were mad, or somebody was in trouble or not doing things. And then some change over time, you might see where now they're beginning to work things out. Now you could see where family members are communicating, or maybe family members or are working on getting needs met, or neighbors or workers. You may see the introduction of maybe like a wizard who's coming to make things better, or you may see things like a doctor gets introduced, or fire and rescue comes, somebody's hurt, and now fire and rescue is coming to help that family member or that person who's hurt in the dollhouse. And so another way aggression may show up, and you would see some subtle changes in the play, is that maybe in the beginning, there would be these epic battle scenes, and there would be the good guys fighting the bad guys. And then somewhere in the play, the bad guys switch. And so maybe there aren't bad guys anymore, and then just everybody is fighting, but there's not necessarily good guys or bad guys in the play. And then at some point, maybe you see another shift where maybe for the people who were dying in the battle, maybe now there's a rescue character coming in, like a doctor coming in, and now they're doing some medical work to help that character heal, and maybe the character's not healing anymore. Not dying anymore. Maybe they're living. And then at some point, maybe the two sides figure out that they don't need to fight anymore, and then they may go off and do a different play focused on different things. So if you're looking at the themes in the play, what you're looking at are subtle shifts in the play, and you may see them play out the same theme over and over for several weeks in a row. And then you may see some subtle shifts with that. Like, for example, this is how many have you guys had this happen to you? Right. So I have a lot of Santray miniatures in my play therapy room. This was years ago. This is probably 20 years ago now, or maybe 15. That like tons of Santray miniatures, and I like the little gems because you could get the different little colors. And so who have kids who come in and they dump all the gems in the sand tray, all of them. Like I've had kids years ago when I had a private practice, and I had more than one sand tray that was available. They would have like 3 sand trays and dump all the gems in all the trays. And in my head, I would be thinking, ugh, I have to clean that up later. And I have a session right after this. But I thought, oh, well, trust the process, right? Anyways, this would go on for weeks with some kids. And then you slowly see that they're not using all of the gems, that maybe it's a little more organized in their play. And now you start seeing containers for the gems. They're in containers, they're not just all over the place. So now we're taking some of that chaos and we're containing it and getting it organized a little bit more. And then maybe shifts into, maybe they're not using all of the gems. Now they're using the sand tray and they're creating scenes, but maybe there's a lot of conflict in the scenes, or there's like a ton of sand tray miniatures in there, tons. But when you look a little closer, you may see that there's some organization in that chaos. So and then you're kind of seeing how that progresses over time. Do you see more organization? Do you see more containment? So to me, this is one of the things where learning how to recognize themes can be very helpful. While if you're still kind of new to this, then you're probably going to want to just notice when you see any shifts. Notice the subtle shifts. You notice what they're using differently. Notice what they're using and what they're not using in their play. And how are they using things differently? These are some of the nuances of what children do with their play that give you an indication that it's actually working. I can't tell you how many times in Play Therapy Academy, when we do like in Play Therapy Academy, everybody does a presentation. We have 2 people presenting a case every time we meet. And one of the things that comes up over and over is, I don't even think this is working. And then as a group, we take a look at what's going on in there. And what we find is when we're looking at the photos or we're looking at the video, all of which is kept private, we're maintaining privacy and protection. When we look at things, though, what we find is there are a lot of really deep things going on in there. And so we learn how to recognize what's going on, and then getting a lot of feedback about different themes and different things that are observed in the play process, and learning how to look deeply. I guess to me, that's the biggest thing when you're talking about play therapy sessions, is learning how to look deeply, learning how to listen deeply to symbolically what's represented in the play therapy session. And then what you're looking at is, over time, what shifts are you seeing? This is an indication that they are actually engaging in the play process, that they are accessing those therapeutic powers of play to work through whatever it is that they need to work through. And I think this is one of the harder things, especially in the beginning, to learn. Here's the thing, though. Sometimes it's like there are times, sometimes even now, I don't know what they're doing. It may take like 2 or 3 or 4 sessions for me to figure out what they're doing. In the meantime, while I'm holding that and trusting the process, what I'm looking at are the details, and I'm looking to see if there are any shifts going on, because that tells me two things. One, it tells me that they are accessing the therapeutic powers of play, and that is key to tell, is play therapy actually working? You're looking at, are they even engaging in the play process? Are they accessing those therapeutic powers of play? That's the first thing that you're kind of looking at. And then the other thing is you're looking at how that may shift over time. And it's going to be very subtle. And here's the other thing. They may look like they're progressing and making progress, and then you'll see some regression when you're looking at your play therapy model and how your client is progressing using your play therapy model. Are they progressing through the stages? You may see sometimes where they seem like they regress. So it's not a linear line. Sometimes it goes around in circles for a while, and then you're looking to see if they're looking like they're regressing a little bit, then how are they progressing from there? If they're regressing, and then are they progressing? And here's the other thing. I hear this one a lot too. They're just concrete. They're not doing anything. It's not working, because they're just really concrete and they're not doing anything that looks symbolic. That's my paraphrase. But when we look at what's going on, what you'll notice is this client might be concrete. So then we look at, what's the reason for that? If this is a child who is pretty concrete because maybe they have some processing challenges, or maybe they're concrete because they don't feel comfortable showing you anything more. I can't tell you how many times I have worked with kids who've experienced trauma, especially kids who've gone into foster care and they're not feeling safe yet. It doesn't necessarily mean the foster care placement's a bad placement. It just means, for whatever reason, and there are tons of different reasons, in that situation, that child might not be ready, might not feel safe to open up in the playroom. They might not show you in the playroom. There might be other ways that they're demonstrating they're making progress, and we'll talk a little bit about those as well. Another sign that your client is making progress, and this one's a little hard, is that they're testing the relationship a little bit. They might do this right away, or most of the time, my experience has been, once they get to feel comfortable with you, they get comfortable with the space, then they may test the boundaries a little bit. They want to see what they can do and what they can't do. And so usually that's a sign that they're feeling comfortable. Some kids come in right away and test the boundaries. I would say more often than not, I see kids test the boundaries when they're feeling, excuse me, when they're feeling a little more comfortable. They want to see how I respond. And to me, that's progress, because now they're feeling comfortable in the play therapy space. They're feeling comfortable with me, and they're ready to test out some boundaries. That gives me some good information. That gives me information about what they're probably doing at home, also in other places, and how they respond when limits are maintained. So that I would look at that as progress, because they trust you enough that they're going to test the boundaries a little bit. And then you're going to, if I'm using an attachment lens, then I'm going to hold the boundary, and then I'm going to see how we work through that repair process. Gives you some really good information. And that might happen at various times. You might have a client who comes in right away and tests boundaries. And then when you're consistent and you're fully present in the moment, accessing congruence with unconditional positive regard and empathy, I throw in a little DBT thinking in my head, which is acceptance and change. My client is doing the best they can at any moment in time, and they can do better, right? So if they're testing the boundaries, that might be a sign that they're making progress. Here's the other thing, and the fourth sign that they're making progress will come from parent report or caregivers. So I use caregiver and parents kind of interchangeably. And this is where you want to make sure you have a really good relationship with parents. So you're going to want to make sure that you meet with parents regularly. I always recommend that it's not just a 5-minute check-in at the end, which is in front of the child. I'm not a fan of that. If you've listened to any of my previous episodes, then you're aware I'm not a fan of that. I believe you will gain trust better with parents when you meet with them regularly, like once a month without the child present, and you have that time to build rapport with parents, to build trust with parents. It's also a dedicated time when you can have conversations about what's going on, and you're able to provide support to parents. They'll trust if they'll make the changes you're asking them to make if they trust you, which is why you need to have dedicated time to do that. The other thing that for you in terms of figuring out is the child making progress. I've had instances where I haven't necessarily seen much in the playroom. This is usually when I'm working with kids who've experienced a lot of trauma. And the caregivers will report a ton of progress. So, for example, like maybe the child isn't really opening up too much in the session, or their play is still pretty safe, I would say. Like they're playing out some things. They may have some conversations about feelings or different things like that. That would be the older kids. And when you meet with the caregiver, what you find out is the child is opening up a lot more to the caregiver, opening up about what they experienced, and that caregiver is really good about being safe and being empathic and showing care and support. And so it allows the child to feel safe in their home, right? The other thing that you want to make sure that you do is you want to make sure that don't skip the assessment at the beginning of treatment. Don't skip the psychosocial assessment in the beginning. And when you do that psychosocial assessment, make sure you're asking a lot of questions to understand what is going on with the symptoms. I always say you need to have in your head this term when you're gathering information about symptoms: frequency, intensity, and duration. How often do they occur? How long do they last? And what's the intensity? So when you're having your parent meetings, you're checking in with parents or caregivers. Is the frequency of the problematic behavior decreasing? Is the intensity of the problematic behavior decreasing? Are they able to use their parents more effectively for co-regulation? This is all progress. Are parents able to co-regulate so that their child can use them for that support? So this is a really important reason why you want to make sure that you are meeting with parents, because you can get that feedback about progress during your meetings with parents. So are the children sleeping better? Are they less clingy? Are they having fewer meltdowns or, like big behaviors at home or at school? All of these are things that you can use as indication that play therapy is actually working. And then the fifth thing is that a sign that play therapy is working and they're making progress is in the relationship with you. Are they making eye contact when maybe they weren't making eye contact before? Maybe before they came into the playroom and they sat on the other side of the room and turned their back to you and whispered so that you couldn't hear a word they were saying. And then slowly they're not having their back turned to you. And maybe they're still whispering, but now maybe they're letting you get a little closer. Or maybe at some point they're inviting you into the play. So, or they're allowing you to witness what is going on. And to me, that's the big key. When they can access those therapeutic powers of play and you start seeing and hearing what their play is, what they're saying, how they're playing, what they're doing, what they're not doing. Are they including you? Are they not including you? These are some things that you're looking at to get an indication of are they feeling safe, which means they can enter into the therapeutic powers of play and they can use that play process. Here's another thing that comes up a lot as well. And I've had these kids as well. And I think somebody in one of the Play Therapy Academy groups meeting called it daycare play. And I thought, oh, what an interesting term. Basically, like they're playing and they're coming in and they're using your therapy office to play. And they don't really need there's not really anything that they're working on therapeutically. They just like to play because kids like to play, which brings up the question of how do you know when they're ready to finish play? How do you know when they're ready to finish play therapy? Like when they're done, especially child-centered play therapy, man, they are all over that. They come in, I get to be in charge in here. I get to do whatever I want in here. There are some ways to manage that, like when you're coming down to termination process. But the question of how do you know if it's working or if they're just playing and using your office to play or paint or paint pretty pictures, right? Is it really therapeutic? And I think you have to go back to looking at some of the things that we've already talked about, right? Which would be maybe you have a child with a ton of anxiety and it took a long time for them to feel comfortable with you and settle into the play therapy process. And sometimes the way that I look at that is if they're coming in and they're drawing the pretty pictures and parents are still reporting at home that they are having lots of emotional meltdowns or they're super, super clingy and they won't sleep in their own bed, but they're coming in your session and they're painting pretty pictures. What does that say? It says in the playroom, they feel safe. In the playroom, they can think about art. We do coloring all the time, right? For emotion regulation, getting our neurocircuits settled down. Painting is a mindful activity. They feel safe coming in, doing something that feels good to their nervous system. And in here, they can have unconditional positive regard and empathy and feel successful in here. Then we're building up that positive sense of self and giving them a space where they can have some success. We still need to work on those other things, and there are probably a lot of other things that need to be worked on in the home and co-regulation and different things like that. And that's why you want to have the parent sessions. I don't necessarily think that having them come in and just play doesn't necessarily mean that they're not making progress. You're going to be looking at all of these things. You're going to be looking at your play therapy model. How are you making sense of what is going on in this child's life? That initial case conceptualization that you're going to be using throughout the play therapy process. And you're going to use that case conceptualization based on your theory model to get a sense of how they're progressing. And what is it that they need? You're also looking at that to understand the themes and what's going on in the sessions. And then that'll give you a better sense of, is it really like daycare play, or is it really just playing and they're not doing anything therapeutic? So you want to think about those things as well. So, and they're feeling connected. If the child is feeling comfortable with you in the session, then they're making progress in that way. So that is it for today. Let me just do a quick recap. Today we're talking about how can you tell if play therapy is working by these 5 signs. What you're doing is you're looking at the subtle behaviors, what they're saying, how they're playing with the toys, how are they interacting with you. You're looking at subtle signs over time to get a sense of, is play therapy working? Sometimes the changes, the shifts are really, really subtle. Sometimes they're huge. Sometimes it looks like they're not making any progress. Oh, they're doing the same thing from session to session to session. And then one session you see a big shift. So the key is, though, you're knowing what you're looking for specific signs. The other thing that you're going to think about is frequency, intensity, and duration of symptoms. And is there a reduction in symptoms in the frequency, intensity, and duration? So you're going to be looking at, are they having an increased ability to regulate their emotions, regulate their behavior in sessions? Number 2 is you're looking at, are there subtle changes in the themes in their play over time? Number 3 is maybe they're testing limits. Right now they've gotten to know you, and now they want to see how this really works and what's going to happen if they test limits with you. So that could be a sign that they're making progress. And then how do they respond? Number 4 is getting feedback from parents. What are parents reporting at home? And this is where that initial assessment and gathering information about the problematic things going on, the problematic behaviors that is bringing them into treatment. You're looking at frequency, intensity, and duration. And is there reduction in the frequency, how often something is happening, or the intensity? Maybe they are having meltdowns at home 5 out of 7 days. And before, it was 7 out of 7 days. And the outburst or the dysregulation could happen anywhere from 10 minutes to all day. And so maybe it's not all day anymore. And maybe it's only 5 days out of 7. So you want to make sure to gather that information as well. And the 5th thing is the child is really able to connect with you and use support from you in the session. They're inviting you into the play. They're allowing you to be a witness of what is unfolding in the playroom. So that is it for today. I did want to let you know, if you are interested in Play Therapy Academy. So if you are finding that you are second guessing yourself all of the time, that you're not sure how to tell if play therapy is working, you're not sure how to apply a play therapy model through all the stages of the play therapy process, you're also interested in it, using a neuroscience and attachment lens for that as well, then I do have an opening I have one opening right now. I might have a couple of more coming up, but right now I do have one opening in Play Therapy Academy. I only have openings as people graduate from Play Therapy Academy or they leave for various and sundry reasons because life gets a little challenging usually. If you're interested in seeing if Play Therapy Academy is a good fit for you, then pop over to my website, which is rhplaytherapytraining.com. That's renewingheartsplaytherapytraining.com. So rhplaytherapytraining.com. Hop onto the consultation page. You'll see on there's information about Play Therapy Academy, and you can schedule a free 30-minute video call with me. We can talk about if play therapy is a good fit for you, if it'll meet your needs. So go ahead and schedule that 30-minute call. There's no obligation. We'll see if it's something that will be useful or not. If it's not, I can recommend something else that might be helpful. We're also going to post the links for my website in the comments, as well as a link to schedule that 30-minute video call with me. All right, that is it for today, and I will see you guys next time. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Next Level Play Therapy. I hope you found the discussion valuable and gained new insights and ideas to support your work helping children, adolescents, and families heal. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Your feedback helps to improve and reach more people who can benefit from this information. Remember, play therapy is a powerful tool for healing and growth. Whether you're a new play therapist or experienced, I encourage you to continue your learning journey to unlock the potential of play in your own work and relationships. If you have any questions or topic suggestions for future episodes, I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on social media and visit my website at Renewing Hearts Play Therapy Training to stay updated on upcoming episodes, trainings, and resources. Thank you once again for listening to Next Level Play Therapy. Until next time, keep playing, learning, and growing.